The second speaker now is Atul Aneja. Atul, Aneja and myself both are students or were students of Jawaharlal Nehru University. So both of us go back long time. And after his education at Jawaharlal Nehru University, he branched off to do media. He writes for The Hindu from Dubai, and every morning, practically every morning, I wake up to what Atul writes in Hindu. Hindu is one of the very serious dailies in India. Atul is going to speak to us on media, the game changer in West Asia. There is a slight change in his title. Atul?
Thank you, Wilson ma'am, for your kind words. Let me first of all thank Arvind and Meena for having me here and addressing and speaking to this august audience. Let me begin by saying that the media across the world, and particularly in the West, has been undergoing a profound and unique transformation. Mainstream media, especially print and television, have long ago departed from their role as the fourth estate, a vital and supposedly autonomous cog in the preservation of a healthy democracy. On the contrary, I would argue that some of the most influential sections of the so-called international media have allied themselves, among others, with the globalists, a cabal of some of the most powerful people on earth residing on either side of the Atlantic. These globalists include some of the world's top business magnates, bankers, financiers, former diplomats, intelligence officials, and ideologues who have been mostly drawn from the transatlantic world. At their core, these individuals envision international governance and the formation of a federated world government as their final, and many would say, utopian objective. These globalists include hyper-influential people such as David Rockefeller, banker, philanthropist, and patriarch of the Rockefeller family that commands stratospheric wealth. Its other luminaries include billionaires like George Soros, the Hungarian-American businessman who manages the cash-rich Soros Fund that supports, quote, progressive liberal causes, unquote. Soros is also the chairman of the Open Society Institute, a network of institutions that is funded to promote, quote, democratic governance, human rights, economic, legal, and social reform, unquote. After the end of the Cold War, the globalists and others like the Neocons have aggressively pursued promotion of democracy, including support for color-coded revolutions in strategically significant parts of the world. One of the leading ideologues of this group is Zbigniew Brzezinski. Brzezinski has continued to remain a highly influential thinker, and there are enough write-ups on the internet to suggest that he has President Obama's ear, to say the least. Early in his career, Brzezinski recognized that technology, in which lay embedded the new avatar called electronics, has begun to integrate the globe as never before. He reasoned that the advancement of what he called technotronics presented a unique and unprecedented opportunity to break down the walls of national sovereignty and over time lay the foundations of a supranational state. In his book Between Two Ages, published in 1970, Brzezinski wrote, "Today we are again witnessing the emergence of transnational elites whose ties cut across national boundaries. It is likely that long before the social elites of most of the more advanced countries will be highly internationalist or globalist in spirit and outlook. The nation state is gradually yielding its sovereignty. Further progress will require greater American sacrifices," unquote. I think the focus on the attack on sovereignty, you can sense it, and this is a book which has come out in 1970. And we see that in the context of Arab Spring, what happens to the concept of sovereignty, and I'll develop on that a little later. In terms of institutions, the globalists are represented in three major interlocking forums. These comprise the Bilderberg Group, the Council for Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission. I will briefly outline the essential characteristics of these three before delving in some detail upon the fallout of the embedment of the media in these forums. Out of the three organizations listed, the Bilderberg Group is the most secretive. The group was formed in the 1950s, in fact on May 29, 1954, as a result of the efforts of a number of people on both sides of the Atlantic who wanted to bring together leading citizens, not necessarily connected with government, for informal discussions of problems facing the Atlantic community. According to Robert Gale Ross, who has in-depth studied these three organizations, Bilderberg members are largely drawn from Western Europe, Turkey, Greece, the Scandinavian countries, the US and Canada. Just to give you a sense of their culture, when they meet, they clear out all the guests and employees in the buildings in which they are to meet. They completely debug all the rooms, bring in their own cooks, waiters, housekeepers, heavily armed security guards, etc., and do not allow outsiders anywhere near the meeting place just before, during, and immediately after they meet. Their meetings in the US have always been held in a Rockefeller-owned property. Complementing the Bilderbergers is the Council for Foreign Relations, the elite organization that is another favorite haunt of the globalists. In his 1991 book, The New World Order, Pat Robertson quotes longtime insider Rear Admiral Chester Ward as saying that CFR is quite open about its advocacy of the, quote, submergence of US sovereignty and national independence into an all-powerful one-world government. David Rockefeller, the arch-globalist shadow, also overhangs the formation of the Trilateral Commission. The formation of the Trilateral Commission was a brainchild of Rockefeller, who roped in Brzezinski to develop this concept. I have so far given you a bit of the flavor of the power, influence, and imperial ambitions of the globalists, which acquire a new turbocharged momentum after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the emergence of the unipolar world. Where does the media fit into this broad one-world paradigm? And what role does it play as a result of its alliance with the globalists in West Asia? In his investigations, Robert Gale has listed some of the most influential media owners and personalities who have participated in the meetings of either of the Bilderberg, Trilateral Commission, and the CFR, if not all the three organizations. Ross points out that the late Catherine Graham, owner of the Washington Post, was a regular at the meetings of all three, Bilderberg, CFR, and the Trilateral Commission. The same goes for Thomas Friedman, columnist of the New York Times, the late Robert L. Bartlett, vice president of the Wall Street Journal. Others such as William Kristol, founder and editor of the political magazine The Weekly Standard, and a regular commentator on the Fox News channel, has been attending Bilderberg meetings. The list of the media moguls who sup with the globalists is vast and insightful. However, it is important to note that during these meetings, media honchos do not participate to report on proceedings, which are invariably open, frank, and agenda-setting, but behind closed doors. It is quite obvious, or at least a reasonable inference can be drawn, that the broad intellectual lines emerging from these meetings are meant to shape the minds, what themes to highlight, what to underplay, and what to avoid of this highbrow media in attendance. The war in Yugoslavia, which included the demonizing of the Serbs, appears to have been the testbed in the extensive use of the media to break up a nation state, undermine the concept of sovereignty, and experiment with the doctrine of regime change. The media played an essential part to justify a humanitarian intervention by extensively and graphically reporting at a breakneck speed on regime atrocities that on many occasions proved exaggerated if not blatantly false. It is also important to note that by mid-90s, the media, including the increasingly powerful international satellite channels, have been sensitized to promote concepts such as soft power, democracy, and human rights in the medium of a unipolar global system, a halfway mark in the globalist project of establishing a supranational state. While the media has been shaped by the globalists, they are not the only game in town. The neocons in the Bush era, more inclined to support hard power than soft power, have had their own aggressive vision of the assertion of American power on a global scale, especially including West Asia, especially after 9/11 and with the inauguration of the so-called global war on terror. One neocon institution that has been playing a leading role in maneuvering, some would say manipulating the media, is the Henry Jackson Society, which of late has been particularly active in Syria. A sense of what Henry Jackson Society is about can be gauged from its international patrons. These include neocon icons James Woolsey, former CIA director, William Kristol, Robert Kagan, Joshua Moravchik, and Richard Pearl. The Society's Director of Communications and Public Relations is a gentleman called Michael Weiss. Through his writings in the online publication Lebanon Now, which has a section called Syria Now, Weiss has been relentless in advocating military intervention in Syria. In his insightful comment in The Guardian, Charlie Skelton says that Weiss is the author of the influential report, Intervention in Syria, an assessment of legality, logistics, and hazards. It is not surprising that the publication has been endorsed by the Syria National Council, now Syria National Coalition. Another Henry Jackson Society associate is Osama Monajed, who has been regularly appearing on satellite television in active support of the Syrian opposition. Monajed runs the anti-government Barada satellite television out of Vauxhall in South London, according to Skelton. Barada Television is closely in turn affiliated with the Movement for Justice and Development, a London-based network of Syrian exiles, says a Washington Post report. And this report is based on WikiLeaks. The pattern that emerges out of this is clear. A network of globalist organizations, think tanks, experts in strategic communication and media have been playing a leading part in setting the international information agenda as part of a larger project of establishing hegemony in the post-Cold War world. Like Syria, Iran has also been in the crosshairs of the information war, unleashed chiefly by influential globalists, neocons, and others with or without the backing of the state. For example, Radio Farda, which is one of the main instruments in winning the hearts and minds of ordinary Iranians, is the Iranian branch of Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty broadcast services. It beams its messages out of Prague. The Iranians are fully aware of the work of Iran Democracy Fund, established in 2006 by the Bush administration. The majority of the fund of $66 million was spent on Radio Farda and the Voice of America Persian. In recent years, the globalist democracy-promoting counter-sovereignty media campaign has begun to meet stiff resistance in several parts of the globe, including Iran. So the riposte to the globalist agenda, their information war, has also come. Iranians believe that they are targets of, quote, a soft war, not soft power, unleashed by what they call cultural NATO. Consequently, they have concluded that an aggressive response is required to defeat this assault. Iran has established a special military force called Unit of Soft War, in Persian Sitad-e-Jang-e-Narm. Its probable role is to disrupt foreign organized soft attacks, possibly by jamming and other similar techniques. The Iranians also started Press TV in 2007, their own satellite channel in English. Its effectiveness is apparent, for Press TV seems to have been deliberately targeted in conflict zones, and this has including the killing of its correspondent in Damascus a few months ago, as well as an airstrike in November on a building in Gaza from where it was broadcasting. While state-backed media such as Press TV in Iran or Russia Today in Russia are doing their bit to counter the globalist media onslaught, the real game changer, in my view, has been the largely uncontrolled instant messaging on the internet and the emergence of social media YouTube, and Vimeo. The citizens' media from below has emerged as an extremely powerful force, which is difficult to control. In Egypt, documentation of protests on video, creation of credible blogs, and tweeting of stories to influence international and domestic journalists has had a powerful impact on news creation. Even a strike in relatively remote Mahalla in Upper Nile Delta can no longer be ignored by the media, for activists are avid at videotaping the event, blogging about it, and using their Facebook, Twitter accounts to force the mainstream coverage of the subject. In turn, mainstream media culture is now in a real and tangible flux. In conclusion, I would like to say that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there has been a real media upheaval. Globalists and subsequently the neocons, among others, for more than a decade networked with the media and monopolized it in an attempt to consolidate unipolarity and undermine the concept of national sovereignty. However, their path did not go unchallenged on account of the emergence of alternative media such as Press TV of Iran and RT from Russia. However, the explosion of the media from below, powered by the internet and social media, made a serious dent in breaking the hegemony of the conventional media directed from the top. With the spread of, quote, global awakening, unquote, by the social media. By the way, these are the words of Brzezinski, the globalist. The demand for a new social contract, driven by newly empowered people with their state, is likely to arise, forcing governments to switch their mentality of control with a real policy of transparency and public engagement. Thank you for your patience.